Seth Leibsohn Show, and welcome to our state's Attorney General, Mark Brnovich. General, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, and obviously a little better with the little scarlet begonias there.
Yes, scarlet begonias by Jimmy Buffett, not by the Grateful Dead, for a good reason. If we had gone 2 for 2 today, I would have given you the Grateful Dead, but we went 1 for 2 today. Fair enough?
Yes, it's like and not scoring the touchdown. It's still points on the board, but it would have been nice to go all the way.
General, this is a good day, and it's a good day for the case that you have been prosecuting, many of the cases you have been prosecuting against the administration, particularly when it comes to these kinds of mandates. How do you read the first decision? How do you read the second one?
Well, obviously, we were very happy with the first decision. I did appreciate the fact that the Supreme Court said that the federal government cannot mandate the COVID vaccine for private businesses. But obviously, we're a little disappointed that they said healthcare workers were not afforded the same rights. And so I do think that's disappointing. And I will tell you, and I know that you're a constitutional guy, I thought Gorsuch's concurrence that Alito and Thomas joined was really good. And, he laid out the fact that obviously the federal government is supposed to be a government of few powers and limited powers. But it does worry me a little bit that, you got Roberts and you got Kavanaugh there joining with the left of the court. And I think that they've given the federal government too much power in some ways, especially over federal healthcare workers.
Is it too blunt a conclusion to draw from your read of all this, General, that if you take the government's money, you have to dance to their tune? Is that too blunt of a read, or is that kind of the essence of how we read this?
I think that is where the court clearly was going, and I do think that is very problematic. Now, I don't agree with that because, we saw this, we've seen in other cases. There's the anti-commandeering principle. Right. We saw this with, we've seen in other instances where the federal government, just because they do provide funding, doesn't mean they get to put the gun to the state's head and have the state do the federal government's dirty work. But in this instance, where you have private entities like healthcare entities, doctors getting the money, the federal government is essentially arguing that, who pays the piper gets to call the tunes. And I think this is why, and you and I have talked about this before, Seth, this is why it's so dangerous when people always want the federal government to solve every problem. And so whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, anytime the federal government gets involved, it becomes more efficient, problematic, and then eventually you end up with these mandates. And we're seeing this, whether it's critical race theory or in other areas where the federal government provides the funding, local governments, states get hooked on it, and then they try to force the states to play by their rules. And not that I'm filibustering here, Steph, literally just today, this afternoon, our office has a case at the Ninth Circuit dealing with the COVID relief bill that said if states took COVID relief money, they couldn't cut their state taxes. And we argue that that's unconstitutional and it violates the 9th, 10th Amendments and that anti-commandeering principle.
Oh, good. I'm good for you for doing that. Stay in touch with us on that. That's an important one.
Yeah, the local media never covers this stuff. So, we're fighting on multiple fronts.
Good. Well, I don't consider myself local media. I'm national media based locally.
I wasn't trying to insult
They still are called. Yeah. But, was it Dickens who said the law is an arse? If you think about it, if you think about that second case, the healthcare case, Mark, General, under Biden, as Phil Kerpen put it, vaccinated healthcare workers with active CoV-2 infections can go to work. That's what the hospitals are now saying. But naturally immune, unvaccinated are fired. That's really where we're at here. It's insane, isn't it?
There is not only this logical inconsistency, but obviously there's the constitutional inconsistency, and that's why we have multiple cases still being litigated. And the problem with all of this, as you know, is there's way too much political science and not enough medical science.
Right.
And, I was on, Fox, or I was on some show talking about, immunity and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, so I don't want anyone sending nasty emails and whatever, calling our office or poor receptionist. But I can read, and I read studies, I read data, and you sit there and you say to yourself, why aren't we talking more even about people that have had COVID they have a higher immunity.
Yeah.
They have more antibodies. They're more immune than people who get the vaccine.
Yeah.
So why are we testing people for immunity instead of mandating vaccines? So, even if we were going to accept the notion, and I don't accept the premise, but even if we were going to accept the premise that somehow the government can implement mitigation strategies, well, shouldn't they do something that's the least onerous or the least intrusive into our lives?
That used to be the principle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Least intrusive means, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate it. It is turning, just last question before I let you go on this busy day, if I can. President Biden, in his press release today, said this will now go back to the states. Do you anticipate much state action on either one of these, or do you think it's going to be pretty much settled in Arizona for here on out on this question?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I obviously can't predict what the policymakers are going to do. We know that last year there was legislation that tried to limit the ability of schools with vaccine mandates and mask mandates. Court struck that down, and we actually sent a letter to the governor saying that he should call a special session or he should promulgate new rules to protect us, and it never happened. So I don't know if there's any sort of political will. I can just say to you, I can say to everyone listening, Seth, that I will continue to fight and push back against government overreach at every level. And, if the government tries to shut down our economy again, whether it's the federal state authorities, I'm going to fight it because I believe in our fundamental liberties, our fundamental rights, and never, ever forget that any government's big enough to give you everything is big enough to take it all away. And once we cede that authority to any government, whether they're a Republican, Democrat, whoever's running independent, once you cede that authority, you're not going to get it back. And that's why it's important to fight for these principles now before we lose them.
General Mark Brnovich, Alexander Hamilton spoke about energy in the executive. I am glad there is energy in our Attorney General in you. Go get him, sir. Well done. And stay close. Bless you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.